This is Dr. David Pomeroy, your host on ADHD Focus. I wanted to remind you that the show is not intended to be a recommendation for diagnosis or treatment of any condition for any specific person. Please consult your mental health professional or doctor managing your ADHD or mental health issues about any diagnosis or treatment-related information that you hear on the show. Refer your ADHD provider to the show if he or she would like more information. Thank you. I've got a special show and special guest today with a topic and a way to apply it in real-world situations. Her name is Eartha Powell, and her company is Head, Heart, Fingers, and Toes Readers, and we'll talk about how that came to be. And she has a course, Transition Awareness Breathing, which is coaching parents and children in how to apply mindfulness practices to everyday real-world situations. Eartha, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So how did all this come about?
Well, my business, Head, Heart, Finger, and Toe Readers, I started basically, writing children's books and, observing how my children learned and how all children learn, with head, heart, finger, and toes. They use their whole body to learn. And one thing that I noticed as I was teaching my daughter when she was little, my children, when they first began kindergarten, they were readers because I thought it was so important. And so I used all kinds of media, songs, all kinds of things to get their whole body involved so they can, learn different concepts of reading. And so that's how the name Head, Heart, Finger, and Toes Readers came about. So under that, I developed different programs, and Transition Awareness Breathing is one of the programs that I developed underneath my business name.
How was it you came around to doing the transitional awareness breathing? We talked a little bit about your son, Zach, and his challenges and your challenges with him.
Yes. I had, I guess I have to say at the beginning, I had no concept of transition awareness or breathing or mindfulness or anything. But, we were blessed with Zechariah. He was born premature. So that was an adventure in itself. But as he began to be a toddler and, put him in preschool and things like that, he was a little bit different. He was very active. And, I just thought it was normal. He just wants to play. But when, you start getting caught by the preschool teachers and the nursery school teachers, I didn't think that was too normal. I mean, so he wants to go on the slide 4 or 5 times. I don't know what the big deal is, but, he started to exhibit behaviors that were a little bit outside of his peer group. And so that took because I'm a nurse, I wanted to learn about, what's normal for a little boy, because, our daughter and when she was little, it's total different experience. And so when he started preschool, and the teachers began to say, we think he has some issues going on. Everybody was making their guesses. Well, sure enough, when he started kindergarten, the pediatrician says, "Oh, it looks like he has ADHD." And, I've heard about it, but I didn't really know about it. And so that's when I started reading, and I thought, oh, okay. And I was taking this course. I took a lot of different continuing education courses, and I learned that a lot of these courses were mentioning mindfulness and relaxation breathing. And you know what, David? At first, it's like, mindfulness? What's that? It sounds like, what is what's mindfulness? That sounds so vague. But let me tell you, as Zechariah got older and his ADHD, the lack of attention and difficulty making friends and I started ordering different books, and I would try some of these ideas, and they worked. And I thought, oh, we have something here. And so I had to retrain myself. I had to, as I was learning about ADHD, I had to learn, because at first, I don't know if you find this about parents who you work with. At first, I was feeling pretty guilty because I didn't think I was a good mother. Did I miss something?
Parents feel that. How come I didn't spot this, or how come I helped them? And they feel very frustrated. And then when there's some, it's ADD, then, what did I do wrong? I think it's very common for parents to feel guilty and that somehow they missed something.
Yes, it's a terrible feeling. And I felt like I was falling down a hole. That's the best way I could describe it. My sense of how can I help my son? I felt like I was grasping, but I couldn't grasp what I knew. And so one of the books that I started to read, it was called ADHD, Non-Medication Treatment and Skills for Children and Teens by Deborah Budrick. And so I read that, and that's one book that I started reading. Another book I started to read was The Woman Who Changed Her Brain. I don't know if you ever heard about The Woman Who Changed Her Brain?
I heard that one.
Oh, wow. This here is by Barbara Aerosmith Young. And it's kind of, at first, I thought, as I was reading, and, they start labeling the children as learning disabilities. And I thought, my child has a learning disability. But with Barbara Aerosmith Young, she did have some learning disabilities. And it explained how she was able to do these different exercises and skills to strengthen the weaker parts of her brain. I thought, that's interesting. And, relaxation and mindfulness came in, and the ADHD workbook that I was reading, that it talked about mindfulness. And so finally I clicked on a link, and I thought, this is what I have to learn. This is what I have to learn. I can't piecemeal this. So I just really did a lot of research. I took some certification courses, and I tried them out on Zachariah, and they were working. they were working. He would, when he was 4, this was before he started. Well, he would turn 5, so so that September, August time frame, he would start school. And so I had him doing relaxation breathing. He was doing great. And so I talked to the teachers. Zachariah knows mindfulness. He knows relaxation breathing. And it wasn't very helpful because as soon as he got in the classroom, it seemed like I was starting all over from scratch again. And I thought, it's like, what happened? And, the pediatrician says, this is common. A lot of children go through this, and, the teachers and stuff like that. And I thought, it doesn't have to be like this, I don't think. And the more I read, the more I read that a lot of parents went through the same scenario when their children started school. And I'm just a person that, I don't sit back and complain because I don't think that's helpful. And so I was, I start praying, God help me to come up with something that I could help the teachers understand how to relate to people like Zachariah and children like him, So as I worked with Zachariah and I tried to work with the teachers and explain things, and, that was very difficult. That was a very, very difficult challenge because it's like, as a medical professional, I'm a nurse, and then talking to academia teachers, elementary school teachers, I had to learn how to talk their language.
Yes, absolutely. The language of IEPs and 504s and those kinds of things can be very daunting. And there are there's a book written by a local, had been a special ed teacher, Larry Davis, like The Insider's Guide to 504 and IEP, that explains a lot of that vocabulary. And I think that can be very, it's a foreign language to most of us.
It is, and I had some empathy for that because, you know, as my clinical specialty in nursing is labor and delivery. And I remember when I worked on the labor deck how, you know, a lot of people, that's not everybody's specialty. And, you know, we start talking that different lingo, and people would go, you know, you're specialized, that's your thing, you know, yay for you. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of mine. I said, oh, this is like when I talk to the academia, the teachers, this is like me, you know, I have to learn their language. And so that was, it was long and arduous, and, but I was determined. And so I was talking to one of the mothers, in the parking lot, you know, across the street from my son's school. And, you know, she said, hey, Eartha, how you doing? How's Zachariah? And I was, you know, all I was waiting for somebody to ask me, and I just flooded her with all this stuff I was doing. And she's like, wow, you should really come up with a course like that to teach other parents. And I said, nah, nobody's interested in this. And that was the birth of transition awareness breathing. That's the concept. That's how it got started, for me to package it as a educational program for parents and children.
So how does that work in terms of the program? What does that consist of?
So the program consists of mindfulness, relaxation, and awareness. So the transition is, and this is what I think that's very important, is as I teach these mindfulness skills, awareness skills, and relaxation skills, these skills are transitional. They move with the person. And what I found, like with Zachariah, is when he goes from one environment, like from home into school, he has to be able to take those tools with him. And the teachers, you know, they have to be able to either know his language for him to relax, or Zachariah has to know his awareness of when he's getting, you know, frustrated or agitated. So that's that transition part. It's just like I remember we talked a while ago, and I guess you know when you work labor and delivery, and the mom goes through that transitional stage, and the body starts to change because something new is starting to occur. And that's that. I guess that's that labor and delivery nurse part of me. You know, I built my program where it's evidence based. You know, and I taught relaxation breathing. And I did prenatal classes, and I remember, you know, I would, you know, teach the ladies and the dads about the focal point and the breathing in and continuing on, and I said, well, I can do this. And so some of that, how it's delivered when I teach relaxation breathing. David, I teach with imagery. I don't use chimes or anything like that. I use because, you know, when someone is going through if they're frustrated or if they're anxious, you know, I don't think, you know, for in my opinion, you know, they have to be able to grab the tools from within and be able to exercise that tool.
Getting caught up in the anxiety, which then gets into the fight or flight, paint, freeze, and reactivity, and nothing's going through the thinking circuits. They can learn, as you say, the awareness that, wait a second, I'm getting overloaded. Here are some things I can do to prevent that. And none of us are born just knowing how to do it. And children certainly can learn it. And otherwise, if they get acting out, it's interpreted often at school that child has a behavior problem. No,
you're so right.
Yeah, they're acting out the way they feel. They aren't trying to give someone a hard time. They're having a hard time.
They pass trying. Yeah. Exactly. That brings to mind that my son was, you know, he would have these moments, and they would send him to the office. It was his impulsory, you know, I was talking about the impulse, you know, episodes. And he was having impulse episodes because he was overstimulated. And I finally had to tell the group, the teachers and the principal and all, I said, you know, sending him to the office is not helpful. Because he's getting labeled as a bad boy. they assure me, oh no, we don't. He's not a bad boy. That's how it's being interpreted to Zechariah.
Yeah.
And so everything had to be like I had to be really frank with them. I said he sees it as a punishment, but if we really want to help him, and he would do his breathing in class, and I was told, well, he's doing this breathing. He's trying to do his relaxation breathing. Oh, so that was the beginning part. But as I worked with Zechariah and the word got out, I started teaching at the school, and I had a small group, and the teachers, I was getting positive feedback from the parents that their teachers were noticing a difference in the children who took TAB, transition awareness breathing, that they were more focused. They were able to get themselves back on task. I mean, it's not like it's not like a miracle program where the person turns like from night and day. You have to work at it.
Sure. It's a skill that has to be developed and fine-tuned as you go along.
Yes, and as they get older, their world changes, and so having to keep it fresh and learning new activities and exercises is one of the things that I try to keep going in transitional awareness to teach the parents and the children.
So how can you inspire or reward a child as he or she gets trying some of these skills and they find, oh, I'm going in the right direction? How can you reward them so they figure, oh, I guess I'm doing something right. I'll keep doing that.
Yes, that is so good. Reward is so important. And that's part of behavioral change. So when I'm teaching, positive words are so important. They're such important gifts. We have positive songs, and it's because a lot of times the children come with a lot of negative self-talk. And when I talk to the children, I just kind of listen to them like a facilitator, and so we'll sing a positive song, and then I'll ask them, think of 5 positive words, and it's really a struggle. And so my goal is to help them build their positive vocabulary and take the positive songs and positive vocabulary out with them as they go. I give as they're learning this, I give them little prizes. Just little things. Just little things. Oh, and they're so happy. They get a little bit competitive, and then they have things to take with them to show their parents. And, of course, now the parents are happy. And so they get that positive reinforcement. And when I get the parents telling me how, so-and-so had a great day, or sometimes, a parent told me that, when you get those alarms that go off on your phone, those alert alarm things, come to find out, one of the children, that was a trigger for anxiety. And, it's like, uh-oh. And so the mother was, telling me, that's a trigger for her anxiety. And so we gave an opportunity. I told them, I said, talk her into the mindfulness breathing, the relaxation breathing. I start them off with 4 breaths in and 6 breaths out. I said, try that. And so she says, okay. And that week, the child had a session class with me, and lo and behold, the alert thing went out. And I could tell that, she was getting anxious and things like that. Where's my mommy? And she never is like that. I said, uh-oh, do we have anxiety going here? So what we did, I said, okay, I want you to think about your favorite balloon. And I want you to blow that balloon to your favorite place. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to concentrate on that balloon. And I played the mindfulness music. And she was very amazed how much it worked at that time. And so I gave her a special prize. So the prize that they come away with is positive talk, and they know Miss Eartha has goodie bags, but what it does is it changes their self-talk, and the parents are so appreciative. I guess another positive thing is that to give the children and the parents knowledge that they're not alone, that there's help and there's information, and they can feel comfortable.
Yes, I think so many, I certainly hear parents at first, they feel this must be the only child that has these problems, or they are the only parents who are trying to figure it out, and all their emotions about it. How come I didn't see this? Because this child's different than my other two, things like that. So knowing that there are other parents going through that struggle, there are other children, and I think, and I know parents are upset when they hear their children say, I hate school, I hate myself, I'm dumb, all that negative talks. So being able to substitute the positive, and parents they're frustrated because they aren't quite sure how to do that. So this is
exactly
great model.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. You want to be an advocate for your child, and when there's negative and the academic elementary arena, they don't mean to be negative. That they really are trying from their platform. They're trying to develop things that's helpful. But
right.
but what's not helpful is the understanding that a child that has ADHD is different. The brain is developed differently, and if we could get that across, if a child came in a school and they had crutches in a wheelchair, that child would be given the accommodations required to help that child succeed.
Right.
But because of the child with the ADHD, they smile, they're happy, or they may not be smiling because they have all this negative talk on their shoulder, that they get outcasted. And I think it's very important for them to realize that when these children are set aside, or when there are in an environment and the children are like, oh, he has a brain issue, or, so-and-so go to the office.
Yeah. And some children say, yes, the teacher didn't want me bothering anybody else. So she said, here's your special desk, and it was over in the corner. Well,
oh, boy.
That child isn't going to feel special.
Right.
Singled out, I'm away from everybody else, I must be bad. I don't want to contaminate someone, or the teacher doesn't want me to affect other people the wrong way. Children take a much different message than what the teacher's trying to be helpful, in terms of not having other children upset, and also that child being able to, as teacher may think, concentrate on things because no one else is around him or her. But children experience it differently.
Exactly. That is so true. That is so true. They feel like, something is wrong with me. Everything's my fault. The reason why I can't learn is my fault. And it's a heavy burden. And, when I read about children when they reach their adolescence and they haven't had the opportunity to get help, my heart just really goes out to those children.
Yes, because then they have friends, quote, helping them. Either it's just you can smoke some of this or take some of that, or the teen finds that, I can escape into video games. Well, that's fun to do for a while, but when they're trying to escape everything because they feel so bad about themselves and everything going on, they're spending hours on video games and not getting even further behind in social interaction.
Exactly. And those children have such gifts, that's hidden inside of them, and they have everything that they need inside of them to bring those gifts out and change. Can you imagine these children with ADHD that can multitask and think of 4 or 5 things at the same time, and they could use their gifts? Can you imagine what kind of better world that they could contribute?
Yeah, the creativity that can be there, but feeling empowered in terms of, okay, now I can control that anxiety. I can take care of this situation. And I'm sure as children get more skilled in the awareness breathing, that they learn, okay, I was able to calm myself down. I was able to keep going. And then hopefully teachers also see that, and parents do. And so you get the positive snowball effect.
Yes.
So right now, you mentioned before we began the show that you're doing virtual classes. Of course, you can't do classes in person these days.
Yes. I'm getting ready to start my virtual class on Monday. This is a class for the new year here in our virtual school. So, I wrote a book to go along with the class. It's called TAB, Mindfulness, Awareness, and Coloring Activities in a Pandemic World. And what it is some coloring books. It has some activities for learning how to do mindfulness, relaxation, breathing. I have questions in there like color your mood and think of 5 positive words. And it's also a tool that can be used for journaling. And I think to teach the children, even if they can't write or can't spell, they can make a picture of how they're feeling or how was your day or something that they can start expressing themselves.
Yeah. And then where does the breathing part come in the coloring book? Is that
yes.
class uses it?
No, it's in there. It's so I call it high five breathing, and so it's a handprint, and it has instructions on high five breathing. I got the idea, you do so much research and things like that, and looking at some of the readings and some of the demonstrations, and so I said, wouldn't it be nice if a person could just look at a coloring book and they could do this high five breathing. And so what I did was I did a handprint and put some arrows around and instructions so that even a person who didn't come to my class, they could follow the instructions and do the high five breathing. I also made a music mix with relaxation music, and they can play it along as they're working in the coloring book. And I tested it out on my children. I tested it out on my students in my class last year. And one thing, David, you know what I found when I was playing the mindfulness music, the children were very focused. They came in, they were really active. They've been in school all day long. They want to talk, and so that was okay. We did crafts, and so then what I did, I had these coloring activities. I just had a lot of. When you do a conference, you have a bunch of papers all over the place. Well, that's what I had. I had a bunch of coloring papers. And so I passed the coloring papers out, and I played the music. Everyone just, really got calm. They were concentrating on their work and things like that. So one day, I gave them the coloring activities, and I did not play any music. There was a lot of movement, finger whap, the feet were kicking, little chattering, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. So then I turned the music back on. I turned the music on. Everything calmed down. And I asked the children, I says, so when Miss Eartha plays the music, do you like when I play the music, or do you like it when it's quiet? And they said they liked the music because when I didn't play the music, it was too quiet. It was too much. They said too much quiet. It was too much quiet.
Too much quiet. That's great. Well, as often the case with these shows, we're at the end of our time, and I've just so much enjoyed listening to your story of how all this came about. And I think my kind of summary look at it is that you were determined to follow your curiosity and able to apply your creative thinking to come up with this way of teaching and coaching parents and children. So I'm very excited that you have that book out, and a link to that will be in the introductory page to this show. Eartha, it's just been wonderful to talk with you, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, this is Dr. David Pomeroy signing off now on ADHD Focus, and we'll talk again soon.